right, and welcome back to Nonprofit Ad Day. I am so excited to have you all here, and I am so excited for this next session. This is your $120,000 advantage, making the most of the Google Ad Grant in 2025. We have our very own Chloe O'Rourke, who you just saw in that amazing video that we just played. And I want us to give the warmest welcome here at Nonprofit Ad Day. Let's keep that energy high. Let's get some gifts going. Get some hands clapping. I am so excited to have Chloe O'Rourke. She is the head of community success for Community Boost Accelerator. Chloe has worked with hundreds of organizations, equipping them with the practical tools and strategies needed to leverage digital marketing and advertising channels like the Google Ad Grant, meta advertising, paid search, and so much more. We talked about going zero to hero earlier. Chloe is definitely our marketing hero, and I am so excited to let Chloe take it away. I'm going to be taking notes. I hope you will be taking notes. And yeah, let's give a warm welcome to Chloe.
Amazing. Candace, thank you so much. Welcome to Ad Day, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all. So again, thank you for joining us at Nonprofit Ad Day. We're here on the search stage, and we're going to spend the next 45 minutes learning all about how to maximize your ad grant in 2025. There have been some pretty major changes to Google Ad Grants this year. So even if your organization is already utilizing the ad grant, hopefully, this session will help give you some insight and tips to make sure that you're up to date on the latest strategies so you can maximize its impact. Awesome. So, a quick intro about Community Boost. So, here at Community Boost, we exist to empower mission focused organizations changing the world, just like yourselves. So, for 12 years, we have directly served 1,500 nonprofits, partnered to raise over $150 million, and helped to educate 200,000 nonprofits through events and workshops just like this one. We're scaling social impact by growing thriving communities with digital marketing. And I'm so excited to share some of our learnings with you today. Amazing. So before we get too far into this, let's just get a little bit more familiar with one another. So I'm Chloe, the head of community success here at Community Boost. Day to day, I work with our accelerator and our Google Ad Grant Launchpad members on a wide variety of digital channels. So from the Google Ad Grant to Facebook ads, email, and everything in between, we really help our partners reach their goals on digital. So, in the last 5 years that I've been with Community Boost, I've personally worked with hundreds of nonprofits at this point, with every goal you can think of. And the vast majority of those organizations are utilizing the Google Ad Grant to drive them toward success. While we're here, I would love to see some quick intros from you all so we can make this as interactive as possible. We'll keep this going. I know we don't have a ton of time, but feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat, get familiar with one another, and we'll keep this going here. Amazing. So this is what is on our agenda for the day. So you probably don't need me to convince you that $10,000 per month in ad credit is good for your organization, but what you may need are some practical strategies to make that happen. So in the next 45 minutes, we will cover everything from an ad grants overview to some best practices for campaign building and an ideal structure for your ad account. So, with this 45 minutes, I'm going to try to spend as much time as we possibly can on practical and tangible tips that you can implement. So, we'll move through some of the introduction points fairly quickly, but feel free to throw any questions you have in the chat as we go. Hopefully, we'll have some Q&A time here at the end, or I'll have a lounge at the end of the session. So, let's get this started. Amazing. So first, let's get into an overview of what the Google Ad Grant is. If you're unfamiliar, we want to make sure we have context as to exactly what we're talking about here. So what is the ad grant? In its most basic terms, the Google Ad Grant gives your organization a $10,000 per month ad credit to run text-based search ads. One more time, text-based search ads. What we're doing here is raising awareness and driving new users to your site free of charge. When you are approved for an ad grant, you'll receive access to a separate Google Ads account. And this has the capabilities to run both dynamic search and performance max campaigns, but only within the search engine results page. We stress the text-based nature of the Google Ad Grant because this excludes the YouTube and display formats that are available in a traditional paid account. However, because your Google Ad Grant exists in a completely separate ads account, you are eligible to have both an ad grant and a paid account active at the same time. One of our main highlights for 2025 so far is that although YouTube and display campaigns may not be available, Performance Max campaigns have been rolled out into ad grant accounts. This is really giving us a new way to approach how we structure our accounts and strategies, but we'll cover more on that in a bit. So, how do you know if you're eligible if you don't have an ad grant already? So, the Google Ad Grant is available for most 501c3 organizations. If you're outside of the US, as long as you have the nonprofit status in your country, that should work as well. But there are three categories that are currently ineligible from Google Ad Grants. So, these are governmental entities, hospital and schools, and universities. So, if you do have any questions and you may be in one of those categories, feel free to meet me in the lounge and hopefully I can give you a better idea based on your site and your mission. But those are the three as of now. So, what exactly are search ads? We've mentioned it a couple times already, so I want to give everyone a visual of what these look like. So, search ads are keyword driven advertisements that generally show at the top of Google's search engine results page. So, for example, if you were to Google the Nonprofit Marketing Summit, this is an example of an ad that you could see at the top of your results page. Search ads are made of a few different components, but the main ones are your final URL and your landing page up here at the top, your headlines, and your descriptions. You'll see here that there are a few different headline options because for the Google Ad Grant, your search ads are dynamic. So this means that depending on the search that triggered the ad to show up, your headlines and your descriptions could show up differently to best answer the query put in by the end user. So, what is the ad grant best at? There we go. Amazing. Okay, so now that we know what the ad grant is, what a search ad looks like, let's talk about what it's best at. Setting the right expectations from the start can make a huge difference in your long term success. So, first and foremost, the Google Ad Grant is a tool for awareness and discovery. So think of this as a way to get your mission in front of people who are actively searching for something related to the work that you do, but they may not know that your organization exists yet. So generally in an ad grant account, we're doing little to no remarketing. The exception here can be a branded campaign that will house the keywords of the name of your organization, but outside of that, the vast majority of users seeing your ads will be discovering your organization for the first time. This is not necessarily going to be a one-stop shop that drives direct donations overnight because we know it takes multiple touch points from someone seeing your organization for the first time all the way through to becoming a donor. But this is incredibly effective for reaching new audiences, growing your site traffic, and starting people on a journey toward deeper engagement. Some really great use cases here can be promoting educational content, driving traffic to program pages, recruiting volunteers, and building email lists. So, that said, when using tools like lead magnets and strong email automations alongside the Google Ad Grant, you can feed the top of your marketing funnel and gain the first touch point for long term supporters without dipping into your organization's advertising budget. I will suggest checking out the session later today about how to turn your ad leads into loyal supporters. I believe it's one of the second to last of the day, and you can get some really great tips on that front. But we'll get back to the ad grant here. So now that we understand that the Google Ad Grant is primarily an awareness-based tool, let's zoom out and just see where this fits within your larger marketing funnel. So as you can see here, we've got 5 stages: awareness, engagement, consideration, investment, and retention. The ad grant lives, again, right up here at the top in the awareness stage, and that's why we've called that out here on this slide. Again, this means the grant is ideal for reaching people who are just starting to explore a topic or a need. They may not necessarily be looking to donate or take a deep action right away. They're often looking for resources, solutions, inspiration, and your search ad is what introduces them to your organization in that moment. So, this is not to say that your organization can't receive direct donations through the ad grant or other direct conversions. Of course, this is something that we see in ad grant accounts, but setting the expectation that search ads are not the end all be all for conversions is important as you set out on this journey. So keep in mind that awareness isn't a soft metric. This is the starting point of every major action. And if we can utilize the Google Ad Grant as your vehicle for awareness, this really supports a major component of your digital marketing presence. Okay, so now that we covered what the ad grant is, where this fits into your overall funnel, let's shift gears a little bit to talk about how to build a really smart and simple strategy around it in 2025. Okay, here's the thing. In 2025, it's no longer just about spending the full $10,000 each month. It's about spending it with intention and with purpose. The most successful nonprofits we work with aren't necessarily the ones using the full budget, but the ones that are using it to support clear, measurable goals that are realistic for a first time user. Things like building awareness, encouraging engagement, or growing an email list. Again, what we don't want to do is spend $10,000 a month sending users to pages that don't offer any value. Where they'll bounce, we don't have a way to re engage them. And instead, what we need to use the ad grant for is, again, as a vehicle to land users on pages that are primed for them to take action. What I want to start with before we get into some more strategy specifics here in the best practices is that we're keeping in mind we're not just targeting keywords and searches. We're thinking through who the person is behind that search. What are they hoping to find? What do they care about? And how can your organization show up in that moment with something meaningful? Okay, let's get to kind of the foundation of your strategy here. We'll cover this in 3 steps and try to keep it as simple as possible. I know a lot of this can sound a bit vague, especially when thinking through who your audience is, what the searches are that they're putting in, because we're marketers and not mind readers. But we do have a few starting points to help us build out a strategy that works. So let's create kind of your simple 2025 strategy in your 3 steps here. First, we need to start by identifying your main landing pages that will appeal to new audiences. Are these your high impact programs? Is it an about page that includes stats on why your organization exists in the first place? Or pages with downloadable resources for those in your communities? If you can identify 3 landing pages outside of your homepage, this can guide your keyword research efforts and narrow down your initial focus. Huge bonus points here if you can create a strong lead magnet that offers them a resource or an incentive to submit their information. But once you have those pages, what are your main actionable and trackable actions that live there? Can we track form submissions, downloads, even scroll depth or time spent on a page? This data will help guide your campaign optimizations after your initial launch. Next up is to plan our campaigns, and this is where we're going to spend the bulk of our time today. So we'll cover best practices for each format, but ideally what we want is to start with 1 performance max and anywhere between 3 to 5 search campaigns to cover all of our bases. So let's get into some search campaigns here. Amazing. So now that we have our overview and our simplified strategy, we're going to get a little bit more technical. And so let's start by covering the first of our 2 ad formats, which is search campaigns. So your search campaigns serve as one of the foundational pieces of your ad grant account. And this is where we'll be able to be more precise with keyword targeting and gather the majority of our data and our insights. So let's get into it. What we're really talking about here with search campaigns, these are sometimes called dynamic search campaigns, same thing. This is a keyword based, more manual approach when compared to a performance max. This is the most common in the classic setup for an ad grants account. And this is where you build out your ad groups based on specific keywords that are relevant to your organization. Search campaigns do require keyword research, which can take a little extra time up front, but this is really essential for success. So let's talk some pros and cons. So first, amazing. Let's start with the pros. You get way more control. You decide exactly which keywords your ads are targeting, and you can make manual adjustments as results come in. You also get more detailed data, including successful search terms, click-through rates by keyword, and even some month-over-month changes in search volume that we don't necessarily get when running Performance Max on its own. Of course, there are a few cons to be aware of, so these campaigns can take longer to build. More upfront setup, keyword research, and some more ongoing maintenance. In general, we tend to see that the performance is a little bit lower in terms of spend with these campaigns as of recently compared to something like a Performance Max, especially again when you're looking at the total spend and traffic volume. But we still highly, highly recommend running search campaigns because this will guide your optimizations and help you identify your most successful pockets of traffic. But again, it can take a little bit more time and be a heavier lift for an initial launch. But at the end of the day, we think it's worth it. So let's talk through the anatomy of a search campaign so you can start to visualize what this may look like for your organization. So, at its basic level, a search campaign is made up of three main components. We have the campaign itself, ad groups, which house your keywords, and your ads. So each ad group houses its own dynamic search ad. So to that end, every ad group can have a different landing page and messaging. To remain in compliance with ad grant rules, every campaign must have at least two ad groups. Again, to be in compliance, two ad groups in every single search campaign. But we generally find that campaigns perform best with anywhere between 3 to 5 active ad groups at a time. Your campaign itself serves mainly as the housing tool for your individual ad groups. At the campaign level, we set the overall settings for the groups to share. So this includes your locations, languages, bid strategies, and your budget. Your campaign level selections can be incredibly impactful on campaign performance. But to me, the most important part of your search campaign comes down to your ad groups, your keyword choices, and how you choose to organize them. From there, based on your keyword choices, the purpose of your ad is to answer the questions contained in your keywords and direct users to your site. But let's break this down even further by getting into the build of an ad group. So let's get into some ad group structure here. So if you take one thing from this search campaign section, let it be this. The organization of your ad groups can make or break your entire campaign. Where you're going to hear a lot about organization here, so let's do it one more time. The organization of your ad groups can make or break the results of your campaign. Each ad group should be focused on one subject, and ideally, every keyword in that group should share at least one word in common. This keeps your group really tightly aligned and ensures that your ad can stay relevant across all of the keyword variations. Why is this so important? Because all the keywords in one ad group share the same ad. So your one ad must be relevant to every single search query in that ad group. If we don't, your quality score and your performance can drop. And this is the most common pitfall I see for organizations that are struggling to use their ad grant effectively. I see many ad grant accounts that have 100 to 200 or more keywords in each ad set. And while it seems like covering all of your bases and getting in front of every possible search would be the key to success, it all comes down to relevancy. The sweet spot here is typically running 5 to 20 keywords per ad group. It is enough to get enough potential search volume while staying relevant and having one ad be relevant to everything. When we think about the full campaign, we generally recommend 3 to 5 ad groups per campaign. This lands you somewhere around 15 to 100 active keywords total, which is a pretty big variation here. So this number might flex depending on what your keyword research gives you, but use this as a starting point and always check, can one ad speak to every keyword in this ad group? So let's look at an example here because I know I'm kind of a visual and an example learner. So let's see what this can look like in practice. So let's think of this as a program engagement campaign for an animal shelter. What we want in this scenario is to separate the ad groups by program so that the ads can be relevant to each search. While all of these ad groups fall under the same goal, which is program engagement, the searches and the questions that users have surrounding each of these programs can be very different. So, what we don't want is to throw something like animal adoption based keywords into a bucket alongside something like wildlife resources. Because not only will it be difficult to match ad copy up with each one, the goals of these users searching up these particular subjects will most likely be looking for completely different information. I like to think of your ad groups almost like drawers in a filing cabinet. So we want to keep everything organized by subject so your campaigns stay focused, relevant, and high performing. Okay, this is a big slide. So I'll give everyone a second just to take a look at this here. But we're going to keep going with this animal shelter example and take a closer look at two ad groups and what this could look like with some of the keywords added into these ad groups. So here we're looking at animal adoptions and training resources. I'll give everyone 5 seconds or so to look at this, but really look at how well grouped together these keywords are. They're pretty relevant to one another. For example, one ad can cover animal adoptions and adopting a pet because they're very, very close together. Amazing. Okay. So as you can see, we've clearly separated keywords related to adoption and adopting a pet from those related to training a pet. So this kind of separation is crucial, even though it may seem granular, because even though some of these users may overlap, they're at very different points in their journey with your organization. So by breaking these out into their own ad groups, you can really tailor the messaging in your ads to match what the user is searching for. We want to send them to the most relevant landing page. So whether that is adoption or training signups, and that way we can better track which programs are driving this engagement. This example is pretty straightforward, but in real life, we know things can get a little bit muddier, especially if you have overlapping programs or low search volume in a specific area. And that's really where trial and error comes in. Stick to a strategy of clear organization and separation, and your search campaigns will not only perform better, but they'll also be way easier to interpret and optimize down the line. Okay, you've heard me talk a lot about keywords so far, but where do these keywords actually come from? And how do we decide which ones to include in our campaigns? This is where we enter Keyword Planner. This is one of the most useful tools, and it's built right into your Google Ads account. If you have an ad grant, you already have access to this tool. You'll find it under the Tools and Settings menu when you're logged into your account. It's over in that left-hand menu. And this is what it looks like when you click on Discover More Keywords. So this is going to be your home base for keyword research. I would get very familiar with the Keyword Planner tool. From here, you have a couple of great options. So if you already have a campaign idea, you've maybe mapped out some of your potential ad group themes, you can start by typing those directly into the search bar here. For example, the keyword list that we saw earlier came simply from typing in animal adoptions and animal training and picking the most relevant results from what Keyword Planner returned to us. If you're not sure where to start, there is also an option to copy and paste your landing page URL, and Google will scan that page and suggest keywords based on the content that's there. A quick tip on that: if your page is heavy on visuals or light on text or doesn't have very kind of broad information, the method of just copy pasting in your landing page might not be as accurate. But if you're totally stuck, it can be a very helpful jumping off point. So once we're in Keyword Planner, we put a theme in. How do we choose the keywords? So once we've entered a starting point into Keyword Planner like animal adoptions, this is an example of a results screen that you'll see. So now I know it looks like a lot of data at first, but don't let it intimidate you. We don't need to look at every single column in order to make a decision. What we're going to do is focus on two main ones to choose strong keywords: monthly search volume and competition. Your monthly search volume tells you how many people are searching for that keyword on average each month. This will help you understand the potential reach for your ads and how often you may be able to show up. If you're an organization that geo-targets to a smaller area or has a more niche mission, this search volume may look much lower and very different than the hundreds of thousands that we're seeing here. If a keyword is relevant to you and has even over 10 individual searches in your area, it could be worth testing if you have the potential to show up in multiple of those 10 searches. As a general rule of thumb, we try to have over 50 searches per month. But again, it all comes down to relevance and trial and error. If you're unsure if something has enough search volume, but it fits into an existing ad group that you're building, I generally recommend testing it for 30 days, seeing what results you're getting, and then you can reevaluate it from there. Our second factor in our column we're looking at here is this one over here for competition. This measures how many other advertisers are also bidding on that keyword at a given time. When you're working with limited resources, like we are with the ad grant, this becomes super important because we want our ads to show up often without getting buried by more competitive bids. This is a bit in the technical weeds here, so don't feel like you need to memorize this, but it is good to know for competition calculation. When it comes to ad buying on Google, there are two separate auctions. The first primary auction goes to paid accounts. They have the first crack at a lot of these keywords that we may want to target. Once paid accounts have their opportunity, that's when ad grant accounts come in during the secondary auction. So not only are we competing with other ad grant accounts for placements, we're also competing with paid accounts that have a bit of a leg up. But there are a few ways to combat that. Because of this, ideally, we're looking for keywords with a high search volume and low competition. That's the sweet spot. But that doesn't mean that you should avoid everything with medium or high competition. If a keyword is highly relevant to your mission and programs, it still may be worth testing. Just keep in mind that we may not show up very often. Your goal here is to build toward that 5 to 20 keyword range per ad group, focusing on terms that balance relevance, volume, and opportunity. For me, I know this can sound a little confusing. And I know when I was first getting started, conducting keyword research and identifying your keywords was the steepest learning curve when getting familiar with search ads. I would say give yourself at least 3 campaigns before you start to feel comfortable in Keyword Planner. But remember, this is an exploratory tool and trial and error will be your friend here. Again, usually the most difficult part about learning to run your Google Ad Grant effectively is getting a hang on the technical side, right? And many of us as marketers have strengths that lie in ad copy and messaging already. So we'll just hit the high points here for ad creation. The most relevant piece of advice I can give for writing your ads is that our goal is to answer the search that your end user is putting in. If they're searching for animal adoptions, one of our headlines could simply be pet adoptions today, or your new best friend awaits, if you want to get a little bit more creative. When it comes to search ad copy, we do not have much room to work with. For headlines, we only have 30 characters to get the point across. In descriptions, we have 90. So when you're crafting your copy, think billboard instead of blog post. Keep in mind again that the goal of your ad is just to direct users to your site where they can take a deeper dive into the information that you have. We don't need to give them every single detail at once. Keep your copy short, to the point, and if you're used to writing email or social copy, this is much drier than you would typically think. I usually recommend including the name of your organization as one of the headline options so you can ensure that you start building up some brand recognition. Official site is another common one we use, followed by the rest of these being really relevant to the keywords you have in your ad group. The last thing I'll touch on here is ad strength, because this does play into your competitiveness with the keywords you select. When you're creating your ad, you will see Google live calculating an ad strength. So this is calculated by how relevant your ad is to the keywords in your ad group. The more keywords you use in your actual headlines, the higher your ad strength will be. We want your ad strength to be at least average, if not good or excellent, because the higher it is, the more competitive your ad is when we're competing for that limited ad space. Okay, now that we've covered our foundational search campaigns, to make the most of your ad grant in 2025, we need to talk about Performance Max. This is a relatively new feature in ad grant accounts. It was rolled out early this year, but the introduction of this format has been, at least from what I've seen, the single biggest game changer for increasing your spend, your traffic, and your overall success. So when talking about Performance Max, keep in mind we are still running text-based search ads that show up on the search engine results page, but there are two main differences here. And the first is that Performance Max is not keyword based. So instead, we target search themes. And so it's a broader way. We only want one Performance Max campaign per ad account, opposed to the 3 to 5 needed for traditional search. Performance Max campaigns are a more automated approach compared to search, and it has a few benefits. So, for the majority of organizations we see utilizing them, they spend more of your available $10,000 quicker. And it can be simpler to set up when you remove the keyword research component. But the biggest downside is that we get much less detailed data, so it's harder to see what's working. And the broader theme approach does give us less control over exactly where our ads are showing up. So those are our main pros and cons here. Okay, let's take a look at our diagram of a Performance Max campaign for our animal shelter example. Let's get back to that. So, at first glance here, it may not look too different. The key difference is that instead of ad groups, we have asset groups, and these are organized more around themes than individual keywords. You'll also notice here that we're targeting multiple goals within one campaign. So, unlike search, where we split goals across your 3 to 5 campaigns, with Performance Max, we'll typically keep one Performance Max campaign live and use different asset groups to target the different outcomes like donations, volunteer signups, or program interest. So that means that your asset groups should each have a clear focus because each one builds a single ad experience similar to search campaigns. So just like we wouldn't mix keywords in a search and ad group, we shouldn't mix messaging in a Performance Max asset group either. For example, here, donation asks and program outreach, for example, will still remain in separate buckets. The structure is different, but the same principles of relevance and intentional targeting still apply. So let's dig a little bit deeper into search themes because this can be a tough one to grasp. So, in search campaigns, you tell Google exactly what you want to trigger your ad. And in a Performance Max, you tell Google what your content is about. And it uses machine learning to match your ads to the right people and the right searches. So we still need to think like searchers here, but instead of assigning keywords, we're building themes that guide Google's own automation. So, a really good example here is the theme for adoption process. So, under a traditional search campaign, this would include keywords like how to adopt a pet or animal adoptions this weekend. And so, a little bit more granular, but a singular theme like adoption process allows Google to bundle those keywords and searches under one theme umbrella. And so, this gives you a bit more flexibility and more opportunities for your ad to show up because we're encompassing more searches here. You can have up to 25 search themes in each asset group. I would suggest starting a little bit smaller than that, but at least 5 to 10. What we want is enough to work with, but to still have room to expand based on what's working later on. Keep the principle of focus in mind and keep your themes relatively similar to one another, and you'll have a really great start when you're building your Performance Max campaign. So we do have a few ad copy differences here. So let's talk about how ad creation shifts a bit when you're working in Performance Max compared to search. So first off, the basic principles of good ad copy still apply. You want to write clear, compelling messaging that speaks directly to your audience and answers their intent, and that part doesn't change. What does change is a few of the format options. So with Performance Max, you have the option for longer headlines. You get up to 90 characters instead of 30. And so this gives you more room to explain the value, tell your story a little bit more. And another one of the biggest differences here is that images are required. These are what power the visual side of your asset group. And we strongly recommend using people based imagery if you have it. Something that feels real and human will almost always perform better than kind of generic stock images or even graphics in this case. So while we do use images in Performance Max campaigns, keep in mind that your images will show as small image in extensions instead of a full display ad, right? So think of them as extension tiles rather than a creative display. Even on desktop here, they show up about this big. So again, keep it people based in that way everyone can see all of the great creative you have going on. So finally, because these campaigns are built to encompass broader themes, your copy needs to allow for a bit more flexibility. So think of this as creating a toolbox that Google can mix and match. And so the more varied but still focused on your theme your assets are, the better. I know this is easier said than done, but with some practice, you will absolutely get the hang of it. Okay, let's start wrapping this up with a quick checklist that you can reference when building your ad grant account structure. First, what we want is to make sure that we're starting with clear goals and conversion tracking. This is what everything else builds on. From there, we're aiming to have 3 to 5 search campaigns. Each campaign should have 2 to 5 ad groups. 2, again, meets Google's minimum for compliance, but we generally recommend 3 to 5 for stronger performance, right? Each ad group should have one responsive search ad, and then we've got your Performance Max campaign where you'll only need one. So within that, we want to build out anywhere between 2 to 5 different asset groups, each one focused on a different goal or theme. So just like search, you'll want one asset and one ad per asset group. There we go. But make sure your messaging and your creative are tailored for each one. This setup gives you a really strong foundation and keeps your account clean, compliant, and easy to optimize. If there's one thing that I hope you walk away with here, it's this. You don't need to be perfect to succeed with the ad grant. You just need to be intentional. If you start focused, you stay consistent, and let the data guide your growth, you'll start in a really great spot. If you want to walk away from today with a clear next step for your marketing, or if you're ready to stop guessing and start implementing some of these strategies that do drive growth, we have got you. Our Accelerator is a hands on program designed to help nonprofits just like yourself gain expert guidance and weekly support and real results from your marketing efforts. We have strategic coaching, ad grant support, learning tracks, a peer community, and a whole lot more. And here at Nonprofit Ad Day, we have a free resource for you. Amazing. So you can book your free marketing alignment meeting now, and you can walk away with a customized plan to leverage the right marketing and advertising strategies. These are really built to meet your specific goals. This is the perfect next step to put your learnings into action. And this is a completely free offer with no obligation. It's really our gift to you to help set you up for success. Spots are limited though, so book your alignment meeting now if you're interested in going that route. But we did leave some time for some Q&A, I believe. So get those going in the chat here. I would be very happy to answer any questions that you have. We also have a lounge coming up here in just a second that we're excited about.
Chloe, I loved this session. This was so insightful. Such a great breakdown. I loved particularly hearing about all the performance max tips that you had. So really great stuff all around. Give it up for Chloe in the chat. There's so many really great questions in the Q&A pane. I'm gonna try to pick
Okay,
out
let's
as
do it.
many of them as we can. So Melissa asked, our newsletter sign up page ads keep getting turned off for landing page experience parameters that I've set up so
Ooh.
don't get the grant ad account turned off. So how do we prevent this? Do we need to change the
Okay.
way our landing page looks? Any tips for Melissa and everyone else facing similar challenges?
Yeah, so there could be a couple of different things going on. So I think I would have to see the way this is set up. But first, for everyone that already has an ad grant account, when your account gets created, you are approved to run ads to one domain and one domain only, and that is yours. And so if your newsletter sign up lives anywhere off of your site, any sort of third party, that could get disapproved. So first, make sure that your actual form is embedded on your site. From there, if it's experience based and this is living on your site, try just adding in some general information on the page. Part of the difficulty here can be if there's no information, if there's only a form, Google doesn't necessarily have anything to crawl to ensure that this is a relevant page. So if you can add any sort of mission messaging, anything informational, that can help. I've also seen things like this get disapproved as a mistake. And so if you know you have both of those, it may be worth appealing or chatting with support about it.
Amazing. And Misty asked a great question about AI mode if you're up to it. How is AI mode
Ooh,
and AI search within Google changing the efficacy of these ads?
that's a great question, and it's a big one that we've been talking about recently. I saw a support article a couple days ago. I'll see if I can pull up the link for you all. But I do believe there are some changes coming. From what I saw in that support article, they're now making it to where some of these search ads may show up above the AI overview, and some may move kind of down below the AI overview, but in between some organic results. And so I know with the AI overview, that has been a big concern, right? That used to be where the vast majority of our ads were showing. But keep in mind here, Google wants to retain advertisers on the platform, right? And so with these changes, I'm sure they're going through a process as well to make sure that this is operating well, both for organic users and for advertisers. I think part of that is going to be just a shift in the placements of different things. But of course, I don't have all the information there. But I will see if I can find that support article I was looking at. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I feel like with this, all of this is so new and there's just shifts all of the time.
Yeah.
So this is something that we're all going to be learning together and keeping track of. So but yeah, great response, Chloe. So John asked, how often do you use automated bidding in your work? It seems today it's all about pleasing Google Ads algorithms in order to get a sufficient amount of impressions.
Yeah, that seems about right. I mean, when it comes to auto versus manual bidding, a lot of those do tend to be kind of paid account things, right? And so we tend to get a bit more granular in a paid account because we're going for the maximum amount of conversions for the least amount of money, right? And so in an ad grant account, we have fewer of those concerns. And our number one goal is just to reach our audiences. And so auto versus manual bidding is a little bit more nebulous, but I will touch on one thing, which is the bid strategy. The number one bid strategy we use in both Performance Max and for search campaigns, we want to go with maximized conversions with a high target cost per action. And by high, I'm talking like $150. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to spend $150 to get one conversion. But what we want is to essentially not limit Google by budget or any sort of restriction just to see how many of these impressions we can carry. And so that's kind of the one bidding thing I would throw out is max conversions, high target CPA, cross our fingers.
Amazing. Lots of more great questions here. I wanted to give you the chance if you saw any in the Q&A pane that you wanted to get to, but um I saw there was a really great one that was just about like metrics, like how do you really decide what was the metric to look at to see how keywords are based against the competition. So a little bit
Yeah.
of a keyword research question.
Great question. So, keyword metric to look at to see keywords based against competition. So, you will get essentially just a competition rank when we're looking at a keyword planner. And so, it's low, medium, high in terms of competition. High search volume, low competition. That is the ideal. But I do want to touch on metrics for your existing campaigns really quick. There are three main metrics, at least that I look at when we're determining your current campaign performance. That is how much you're spending, how many impressions you have, so how many people you're reaching, and then the click through rate. I tend to think that click through rate is the biggest signal if your ads are doing well and if we're reaching the right people. If we're getting in front of a ton of folks, but they aren't interacting with it, that tells us that we may be a little bit off base. And you can get really lost in the sauce when it comes to a lot of this data interpretation. So, really look at how many people are you reaching, how many people are clicking on it, and that will give you a really strong guide if you're on the right track or not. Also, I see a quick one from Morgan in here. I can cover that really quick. Is there a reason why we shouldn't have more campaigns than the 3 to 5 or one performance max? For search, no, 3 to 5 is just a guideline. If you do have more programs, feel free to build more. If there is a limit to the amount of campaigns you can have, I have not found it yet, and that's saying something. And so you are more than welcome to launch more, but 3 to 5 tends to be a good foundation. So I wouldn't have fewer than that, but you can have more. And then Performance Max, this is an interesting one. One campaign is generally recommended just so they don't interfere with one another, and you can encompass all of your goals within that one campaign. So search campaigns, feel free to go for it. I would probably still stick with one Performance Max though.
All right. There are so many really great questions. I actually want to like just roll with a couple more if you're
Yeah,
down for it, Chloe.
let's do
Um,
it.
Sabrina asked, our organization has multiple focuses, one being addiction. Google
Mhm.
Ads don't like the word addiction. So what would
Yeah.
you how would you suggest that they get around that?
Sabrina, I'm not gonna lie to you, this is a tough one. We have a few accelerator members right now. You know who you are. We've been fighting for a while to try and get ads up and running here. For one particular field, addiction services is pretty tough. There's a couple of different things that I would recommend though. First is it may not necessarily be your ad copy that's triggering disapprovals. It could even be your website. And that's where it gets a little bit hairy. And so when you're linking out to a landing page, if you have things like addiction services, any sort of drug terms, rehabilitation terms, Google can see that and go, oh, you're a rehabilitation organization, denied. So it may not necessarily be your ad copy, even, but in your ad copy, I would soften it. And I would not necessarily include things like addiction services. Recovery tends to be okay every now and then. You can sometimes get away with recovery. It just depends. But when it comes to your landing pages, since that's the most difficult thing to change, I usually recommend maybe launching a blog if you don't have one already, and you can launch some general content that you can link ad grant ads out to. And that way you can have some adjustable landing pages. This one's not an exact science just because for this one type of organization it gets real hairy, but maybe a blog section you can send to some general information. That's what I would recommend.
Amazing. Chloe, this is so great. Last question for you, which I know you went over a lot of this earlier, but I think it's just a great bookend. Do you have any resources or suggestions for setting up Google Ad grants for the first time? And how do you claim the free ad spend?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first, of course, I'm biased. Come to workshops like this. We try to give you as many actionable tips as we possibly can, right? But when it comes to actually applying for and getting approved for your ad grant, it comes down to it's a two-step process, and it should be relatively straightforward if you're an eligible organization. First, start by applying for a Google for Nonprofits. That's just the portal where you can access all of these tools. Apply for your Google for Nonprofits. Once you're in there, you can activate your ad grant. Once you're into the ad grant, I would suggest coming to these events. Google even has some really great support tools. Of course, I'm even more biased about this, but the Accelerator exists so we can really teach you how to do a lot of this stuff yourself. But it seems if you're here, you're already on the right track. But apply for your Google for Nonprofits.
Amazing. Chloe, this was so great. Thank you so much. You absolutely, I think you said earlier when we were backstage that this is your first ever public presentation on the Google Ad
It
Grant. You
is.
absolutely crushed it. Give it
Thank
up for
you.
Chloe in the chat. I want to see all the love. I love the hand claps. Let's keep it going for Chloe. What a great session. So informative. What a great opportunity. You don't have to have a budget to take advantage of digital advertising for your nonprofit. You just need to take advantage of the Google Ad Grant.